everyone, welcome to this week's Weather Extra. I'm First Alert Meteorologist Jillian Johnson. We had a wild week of weather here in Central Texas as we went on a true temperature roller coaster ride. Temperatures were inconsistent over the past week thanks to numerous strong cold fronts, but those fronts did thankfully bring us some decent rainfall amounts. Here's a look at some of the rain totals from the past work week. The highest amounts fell in our southeastern areas, while lesser amounts fell the further west you traveled, with the lowest amounts actually falling west of Highway 281. As far as totals of rain amounts went last week, most received anywhere from around a half inch to about an inch, but some of our eastern and southeastern counties saw between 2 to 3 or to nearly 3 inches of rain. While totals did vary across the region, it was nice for everyone to pick up some measurable rainfall, adding to the rain we've seen so far this year. We now bring in First Alert Meteorologist Sean Bellafury, who brings us a deeper dive on why we've seen such crazy temperature swings so far in February. Sean.
February 2025 has been a month of wacky weather, and we're only halfway through the month. The first full week of February 2025 featured exceptionally warm temperatures, tying a record high in the 2nd, tying a record high on Thursday the 6th, or breaking actually on the 6th, and tying a record on February 8th of 88 degrees. And I want to focus on this 88. First off, the reason why we were so warm for that first full week is because of the jet stream. It runs the weather, especially in the wintertime season. Now, whenever we have a wavy jet stream with lows and highs moving across the country, that is what helps to bring storm systems across the country. But what happened for that first full week of February is the jet stream was fast and flat, and without the storm systems to move the air, the cold stayed bottled to the north and the warmth stayed bottled to the south. But record temperatures, you kind of need a little bit of some extra something to get to those. And that's where compressional warming comes into play. We've talked about this before because it is a major factor in Central Texas's weather. Now, off to our west, we have higher elevations across West Texas. So the air that is on the top of the higher elevations is typically cooler. And as it moves downhill or down mountain, that sinking air starts to slope down and starts to warm up and dry out. This is what typically happens for Central Texas, but that's not what happened on Saturday the 8th. We had a lot of warm air in place to start off the day, but as this cold front started to approach our area from the north, we still had the warm air ahead of it, but the front actually helped to boost the temperatures even more. Taking a look at a cross section of a cold front, instead of looking top down, side to side, cold fronts sharply undercut warm air with cold air. And if it's a very sharp cold front, that's when we get those thunderstorms to form. But the air that gets shoved up because of the colder air undercutting, that is warm air. So as the warm air aloft above the cold air starts to go in front of the cold front, that works just the same way as a mountain does, sinking and compressing, which helps to heat up those temperatures. It was a hot week of weather across Central Texas, largely all due to that compressional warming. But as that cold front did sneak in, of course, those temperatures did tumble for a while. Reporting in the studio, Sean Bellafury, KWTX News 10.
Thanks, Sean. 3 different storm systems brought a variety of severe weather across the nation over the past week. Tens of millions of Americans were under weather alerts. Part of the Appalachians, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeastern United States were hit with snow and freezing rain Tuesday and Wednesday, which caused a mess on many roadways. Another powerful winter storm brought additional midweek snow, ice, and rain into the plains. That same storm system would march east and continue to bring wintry weather across much of the Midwest and Northeast Wednesday into Thursday. And the third storm system, moving in from the Pacific Ocean, slammed into the state of California towards the back end of the week. The atmospheric river-fueled storm presented a serious flood threat to much of the state. This storm also brought heavy snow to California's Sierra Nevada and mountains of the west. All of this severe weather once again traveled east across the nation over the weekend. And take a look at this. Those same storm systems brought rounds of severe thunderstorms to people across the deep south last week. People near Pensacola, Florida had to clean up following an EF1 tornado that struck Tuesday afternoon. Here's a look at some of the aftermath following the twister. The storm ripped the roofs off numerous buildings and brought down power lines. At least 3 people were hurt, but thankfully no fatalities. And the threat for severe thunderstorms returned once again across the deep south for the middle of the week as well. Strong thunderstorms produced tornadoes across parts of Mississippi and Alabama Wednesday afternoon and night. You're looking at some of the storm damage following a tornado near Columbia, Mississippi. Many homes and businesses suffered major damage. Reporter Jay Harrison spoke with a local resident who survived the twister with his family.
Our sirens went off on our phones, and I opened the front door to see what was going on. Just look at the weather.
Wayne County resident Jamie Cooley says he was inside with family Wednesday night when he got up to see what the commotion was outside.
And when I did, the wind pulled the door out of my hands.
He says Wednesday's suspected tornado was something he'd never seen before.
It blew me down and across the yard, and right here to where this tree landed, blew over behind me.
Just down the road, several homes were damaged while others are only memories. Everything from trees to clothes now are part of the rubble.
We are just right now covering basically the northwestern and the northeastern part of the county. Those are the counties that are the hardest hit right now.
Wayne County EMA Director Angela Atchison reporting no deaths in the tornado, but multiple unconfirmed injuries. Several surrounding first responding agencies have joined in the recovery effort.
We have boots on the ground. We have people going house to house, clearing houses. If there's anybody out there that has not called in that needs help, we encourage you call in right now.
The process is only just beginning, but neighbors in Wayne County are already lending a hand. Several of them offering up their own equipment to help with the cleanup.
We're here, you know, and we're good, and we're going to be fine, and we got great neighbors, and we all support each other, and that's what it's all about.
We've been following their story since last summer, but those two astronauts that are currently stuck at the International Space Station may be making their way home soon. NASA is finalizing plans to bring astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams back to Earth on a space X-Dragon as soon as mid-March. The pair initially set out for an 8-day mission back in June, but problems with the Boeing Starliner spacecraft prevented their timely return, leaving them stuck in space ever since. In an interview, Sonny Williams, now the world's most experienced female spacewalker, talked to CBS anchor John Dickerson about her extended stay. Here's what she had to say.
Like where we are right now, you know, you come and look out the window and you just go, wow, I got to pinch myself to be able to have this view, to be able to share this view. I mean, I think one of the things I was regretting from a short duration mission was it's hard to share the whole thing with people. And on a long duration mission, you get that opportunity where you get to talk to people, get to talk to school kids. So I think that's in the back of my head. Hey, it's an opportunity, you know, like, let's do it.
Williams says she misses a good latte and is looking forward to some earthly delights like petting her dogs and jumping in the ocean. Scientists are now using artificial intelligence to reveal secrets on Mars. And up next on Weather Extra, we learn about the technology they are using and the secrets AI is uncovering. Welcome back to Weather Extra. A new study of Mars suggests there may be enough water in cracks and pores of rocks in the middle of the red planet's crust to fill oceans on its surface. Data from a retired NASA mission revealed evidence of the underground reservoir. It found the groundwater would likely cover the entirety of Mars to a depth of 1 mile. The data comes from NASA's InSight lander, which studied the interior of the planet from 2018 to 2022. According to the study, the water is located between 7 and 12 miles beneath the surface. However, if the water could ever be accessed, the findings suggest a new place to search for life on Mars. And researchers say artificial intelligence has made a breakthrough discovery in space, revealing even more secrets about Mars. And as CBS's Tina Kraus shows us, the findings are shaking up how scientists view the planet.
That's the sound of a Marsquake. And when the red planet shakes, new AI research shows the impact goes deeper than scientists ever knew.
The seismic waves are able to take a faster path or a highway, let's say, through deeper layers of the planet.
NASA launched the first mission to study the deep interior of Mars in 2018 with the InSight lander. Now European scientists have used artificial intelligence to spot a link between Marsquakes recorded by the lander and seismic activity caused by meteor strikes.
You have a haystack and you need to find the needle. And this is where AI comes in.
AI scanned more than 120,000 images captured by NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter to identify new impacts. Researchers found meteoroids strike the surface twice as often as they thought, and that seismic waves travel further than they knew, reaching distant regions of Mars.
Previously, we were kind of seeing the planet in black and white. Now we're seeing it more in color. We're seeing it deeper. We've got a full spectrum of seismic signatures coming in.
Scientists say the AI intel will help them better understand how Mars and other rocky planets like ours have been formed, and they plan to keep using the high-tech tool, hoping to uncover more secrets beneath the surface. Tina Kraus, CBS News, London.
And now to some top stories about the moon. The World Monuments Fund has included the moon in its 2025 list of vulnerable heritage sites. Every 2 years, the international nonprofit puts out a list of 25 sites at risk. This is the first time the group has included a location beyond Earth. There are more than 90 historic sites on the moon that are related to astronauts making visits there. That includes the Tranquility Base, where humans first set foot on the lunar surface. The landing site preserves things like astronaut Neil Armstrong's boot print. The moon is on the fund's 2025 watch list because the group believes the artifacts there are at risk due to accelerating lunar activities. And the moon may be 100 million years older than planetary scientists originally thought. The moon has been thought to have formed roughly 4.35 billion years ago, after a Mars-sized object collided with Earth and created the moon. That timeline is based on analysis of lunar rock samples from NASA's Apollo missions. But new research suggests that the moon formed earlier, more than 4.5 billion years ago, and that it then experienced a dramatic remelting event at the time other scientists had thought it first formed. Researchers believe as the moon was moving away from the Earth, Earth's constant gravitational pull warped the moon in a way that caused it to heat up and melt the moon's surface, therefore hiding the moon's real age. And we know the Grand Canyon took millions of years to form, but new research suggests that 2 Grand Canyon-sized valleys on the moon formed within just 10 minutes. Scientists say it happened about 3.8 billion years ago. The massive canyons are hidden on the far side of the moon, near the lunar South Pole, where NASA's Artemis 3 mission aims to land humans late next year. The lunar canyons are part of the larger Schrödinger impact basin. That's where an as-yet unidentified object slammed into the moon billions of years ago, which likely led to the creation of these canyons. Over the past few years, we've seen an increase in the development of alternative energy sources, mainly in the form of wind and solar. One type of energy production that's gaining a lot of momentum nationally is nuclear power. In this week's Degrees of Science, Brady Taylor spoke with a nuclear power expert from BYU about the science of nuclear power and how safe this type of energy production is. We'll have a listen to their conversation right after the break.
Dr. Mehmet, I guess the first question when we start talking about impacts of nuclear energy, but how exactly is power produced?
Yeah, great question. So it turns out that when you have a very heavy element with a lot of neutrons and protons in the nucleus, like uranium, when you hit it with a neutron, it becomes unstable and actually splits into 2 new elements. And it also creates several new neutrons that can then go on and repeat that process. And so when you're making power using nuclear energy, what you're literally doing is taking this uranium and hitting it with neutrons and creating this chain reaction where you continually split new uranium atoms. And then that heat that's generated, which a lot of heat is made when you split a nucleus. That heat then heats up the water, which then turns it into steam, which then turns a turbine, which generates electricity. So it's just like using heat from a coal plant or a natural gas plant, except that it comes from splitting atoms instead of from burning things.
So, you know, we've done coal power and a lot of different stuff. How safe is nuclear power production?
So a lot of people wondered that same thing, and a few years back in the early 2000s, a couple of scientists actually endeavored to look at that question analytically, and they went through and gathered data and assessed different circumstances in commercial power production and came up with a chart that shows the number of deaths per terawatt hour per year of all the different types of electricity production, as well as the fraction of the US electricity market that they supply. And at that time, the very lowest deaths per terawatt hour per year at about 0.03 was nuclear, closely followed by solar, which was slightly higher than that. Really, the answer to that question is even though nuclear produces about 20% of our overall electricity in this country, it is the safest power production method that we know.
How does greenhouse gas production, how does that compare with wind and solar when we talk about nuclear?
We rate the greenness of these things with respect to global warming by how much CO2 is emitted. But when it comes to the actual production of electricity, wind and solar don't make any, and nuclear is right there with wind and solar in that no emissions are created during the operation of a nuclear power plant. And so it is, as far as green is concerned, one of the best green energy sources we have. In fact, 50% of the carbon-free energy in the US is from nuclear.
So what kind of new technologies are we seeing when it comes to nuclear power production?
So the original light water reactor was developed to generate electricity and to cool off the uranium using this water. And it worked really well in the Navy, where it was developed by Admiral Rickover, because there was an abundance of water on these subs and aircraft carriers. There are some challenges. It's a little harder to keep those cores cooled off, as well as we have the waste question, and even recently the cost question that nuclear is considered expensive and difficult to pay for. And right now, there are a couple of dozen plus companies in the US that have developed advanced reactors that don't use water or that don't use solid fuel. Instead, they use liquid metals or gas or meltdown proof fuels. And these reactors are such an improvement to an already very safe technology that it's incredible.
So, you know, we always think of the huge nuclear reactors, the big power plants. But one new thing is these modular power production. What are those, and what's the future going to be like with that?
So really, there are a couple advantages to the modular reactors. One, it's really difficult for a utility or a company or a municipality who wants to use nuclear power to be able to afford a plant, because the upfront capital cost for these enormous gigawatt level plants is just so large. Having small plants allows you to buy just the amount of power plant that you need and then scale up as you need more and more and more. So you're allowed to amortize the capital costs, which is one of the big barriers to entry for a lot of potential customers. The second advantage is with these smaller reactors, if you can make them in a factory and ship them to a site, you can both A, make them more cheaply because they're factory fabricated instead of assembled on site, and B, you can also ship them to anywhere, including remote places like the middle of the frozen north or remote desert areas or things like this. And when you combine that with the fact that some of these advanced reactors require very little to no water, it really opens up the market to where it's more accessible to have nuclear power, and you don't have to sell the farm just to get a single plant.
Yeah, that's definitely very interesting. So looking forward, what kind of challenges are we facing when trying to push more towards nuclear power, or having that as an important power source for us?
Great question. And a lot of people have been trying to push advanced nuclear power forward. The number one barrier to entry is the licensing process. Right now, we've had a couple of new reactors that have been licensed, and they're not really technically the advanced reactors that we mentioned with all these new features. They're still light water reactors. Both of those took approximately 20 years and $1 billion just to get a license for. And so that licensing barrier is just enormous, and that makes it very difficult to move these advanced technologies forward.
To hear this full conversation about nuclear power in this week's Degrees of Science, scan the QR code on your screen to watch on YouTube or go to KWTX.com/Degrees of Science. Weather Extra will be right back. Welcome back to Weather Extra. A new report provides a sobering look at extreme weather events and the impact on real estate prices. The report from climate analytics firm First Street estimates real estate prices will plummet by $1 trillion by 2055. Researchers say part of the problem is more and more people will leave areas where climate risks and insurance costs are too high. But the report was not all gloom and doom. While places like Tampa, Florida could see a major drop in home prices, people living in parts of the Midwest may be among the most likely to be resilient over the coming decades. And as natural disasters intensify across the country, potential buyers may be assessing an area's climate risk when shopping for a new home. That's why Zillow launched a feature showing how vulnerable a property for sale might be. The website feature now shows flood, wildfire, wind, heat, and air quality risk on individual listings. The feature also estimates a home's risk of 15 and 30 years into the future, which are typical lengths of fixed mortgages. According to Zillow analysis, back in August of last year, 55% of all new listings were at risk of extreme heat, while nearly 17% were at risk of a major wildfire event. And we've officially passed the 1-month mark since the devastating wildfires broke out across Los Angeles. The fires destroyed at least 16,000 homes and businesses and left more than 24 people dead. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass says crews are making progress removing hazardous materials, clearing the way for new construction. She said those who lost their homes are receiving property tax relief and rebates for utility payments. She added the city is eliminating the red tape around the permitting process so LA can begin to rebuild.
These have been a defining 30 days for our city, for our commitment, and effort is really underway. So over the next 60 days, we are going to make further progress through an all-in, all-hands-on-deck effort. We are going to build Los Angeles back to being the #1 city in the country.
Bass's remarks coincide with the release of alarming new video of the Eden fire that destroyed much of Altadena. It shows first responders evacuating a nursing home which burned to the ground. Within hours last week, the utility company Southern California Edison told state regulators it is investigating whether one of its idle transmission line ignited the Eden fire. So far, the utility says there's no evidence that its equipment was responsible. Officials say the cause of the wildfire remains under investigation. And Allstate Insurance says it will pay out $1.1 billion in claims due to those wildfires. That's a significant payout, but the insurance giant said it was able to limit its losses partly by pulling back from the California market. The company is one of many insurers that have been canceling homeowners' policies in many parts of California due to the growing threat of wildfires. That leaves many homeowners with more expensive and often limited alternatives. Some end up with no insurance coverage at all. Allstate's liability is just a small portion of the total insurance claims from the fires. They're forecast to cost the industry between $35 and $45 billion. Well, that's all we have for you on this week's episode of Weather Extra. Hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you right back here next weekend.